Welcome to Alaska Weather, a production of Alaska Public Media and the National Weather Service, Alaska Region. Produced and broadcast daily from the studios of KAKM, Alaska Weather provides complete forecasts, public, marine, and aviation for all of Alaska. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
Alyeska Pipeline Service Company, sustaining Alaska's pipeline and its operations today and into the future.
The National Weather Service.
And good Wednesday to you and yours, everyone. I'm meteorologist Dave Snider with the National Weather Service. It's the 8th of June. As always, we encourage you to stay up to date with your local weather information, and you can find that anytime at weather.gov/Alaska. Now, things are going to change here coming July 6th. You're going to notice some changes in the way the website looks, but also the way it behaves or acts. If you've got bookmarks now that take you to a favorite spot, kind of buried deep inside those weather pages from the National Weather Service, you're going to want to check out the way the new websites look. Go to w2.weather.gov and type in AFC for Anchorage, or /AFG for Fairbanks, or /AJK for Juneau. And many other places in Alaska will have similar changes there. But go to one of your websites and take a look at about how that behaves and see if you can break it. See if you can find what you need. See if you can't. And either way, let us know what you see so we can make it better, so that on July 6th, you're ready to get your information the same way you always have from the National Weather Service here in Alaska. The weather info line is open at 800-472-0391. We're not going to change that at all. You can still use your phone and punch in the numbers to get to your forecast information that way. And of course, we'll still find you on Facebook, on Twitter, and on YouTube. And around 4 o'clock in the afternoon, you get your daily afternoon map briefing. And if you would have listened to that today, you would have heard me tell you already about the winter storm watch that's posted for the eastern Beaufort Seacoast. How much snow? 5 to 8 inches is possible there. That's what our friends in the National Weather Service office there in Fairbanks are telling us, that when the next surge of colder air drops in, that and the lift and the moisture that's passing over at that time, starting on Thursday, but especially Thursday night and into the evening hours, and then slowing down a little bit on Friday. Thursday night seems to be the really big focus for when a lot of that snow could come down. 5 to 8 inches is possible. Now, this is a winter storm watch. What does that mean? Well, watch out. Something is coming, something is possible, and get prepared. Now is a good time to think about what might happen if you get that much snow now that we're in June. So it's not unusual to get snow, of course, in northern Alaska in the middle of summertime, but that is a decent amount of snow there, and that could change the way things work and how you travel and how you see. Visibility could drop as that moves through. So Thursday is the winter storm watch beginning there, and if it does look like this is going to be more of a for sure thing, of course, we'll issue a winter storm warning if for sure we're talking about that 5 to 8 inches, or if it looks like maybe a little bit less snow, perhaps it'll be a winter weather advisory. That doesn't mean it's not happening, it just means that perhaps it's going to be a little less severe. So right now we're in watch mode, watching to see if things shape up just a little bit more and our confidence level in that event goes up for the eastern Beaufort Seacoast. A winter storm watch for 5 to 8 inches of snow perhaps tomorrow. Fire danger right now for more southern areas along the Koyukuk Valley into the Noatak Valley, as well as parts of the middle Yukon Valley and lower Yukon Valley. Hit and miss high fire danger there. A lot of that seems to be concentrating and maybe growing once again north of the Alaska Range for the middle Tanana and into the Copper River Basin, as you would expect, as well as some hit and miss areas around the upper Yukon Valley. Southeast, not seeing any problems. Southwest, not too many problems there. And again, fire danger remains at a higher level, and with not a whole lot of adequate precipitation moving in any widespread form today or tomorrow, it does look like some of that danger might grow just a little bit more. However, there is precipitation coming into the west coast. Here's a look at the satellite picture. Low pressure here. Let's see if we can count these. 1, 2, that's hiding there in the scan that we don't see, and 3 areas of low pressure, all surrounding Alaska. In the middle, a ridge of high pressure sitting across the western Gulf. Watch the satellite picture one more time, and that hidden lows right here. It'll dip out of the view here in just a moment. But what you'll see is that low pressure is moving away from southern southeast. It's still kind of sloshing up a little bit of moisture here across some of the higher terrain out of British Columbia and southern parts of Yukon. Low pressure across the North Pacific is going to creep its way a little bit further northward, but really the moisture that it's pushing will approach the west coast as we get toward Thursday and Friday, especially on Friday there, so a slightly better chance of that. But the big deal is the cold that's dropping out of the Arctic Ocean, and again will probably affect the Beaufort seacoast with at least some snow and maybe as much as 5 to 8 inches of snow. You can see a little bit of that brighter white right here north of Barrow. That's where that colder air is, and this is sending one surge southward. It already has moved through. It moved through Shishmaref around 4 o'clock in the morning yesterday and is pushing all the way into the upper Yukon Valley here, and it's moved across the Brooks Range. You'll see those clouds and in some cases some showers, probably some thunderstorms as a result of that moving into some of the warmer air across the south. But as the second wave moves southward, that's going to invigorate some colder air working toward the eastern Beaufort seacoast. And with that, again, comes that possibility of some summertime snow. So interesting stuff happening there. Low pressure here, low pressure there, and low pressure there. Not a whole lot going on right here across south central Kodiak Island. So what do you get? Nice warm weather. Maybe too hot for some people. Temps in the 70s for many across the Susitna Valley, Cook Inlet, Kodiak Island, Bristol Bay, in the lower Yukon Delta region. It's going to be warm. And some of that heat will probably work its way across the northern Gulf Coast as well, with very light winds, if not variable winds, and fair weather. So perhaps use that to your advantage. Here's a look at the map. Up north, there's a cold front. That's the second one. And you're going to see another one here as we go ahead in time. The frontal boundary from yesterday has already dropped southward, and along that some showers have formed. Convective clouds there have developed in the heat of the day. Across southeast, pretty fair weather. Didn't see any hints of any rainfall this afternoon. Low pressure across the central and western chain, ginning up a little bit of rain and some drizzle. 992 millibar low there. Not really anything major to write home about there. As we get to tonight, you can see it's already filling in. Doesn't move much. One of the waves out across the western chain ejects another little impulse there across the eastern Aleutians and into the southwestern tip of the peninsula. That's about 1,004 millibars. That's going to fall apart as well. Showers across the Alaska Range up north, some clouds breaking up. Wouldn't be surprised to see fog around Kotzebue Sound and around St. Lawrence Island. Up north, there's that next cold wave, and as that continues dropping southward, tomorrow during the day, you're going to see rain showers across the Arctic coast, but then that should gradually cool down pretty quickly, especially right offshore. Rain and snow showers will become all snow, it looks like, by Thursday evening, and the intensity of the snow looks like it will pick up across the eastern Beaufort seacoast. So for those in Kaktovik, Flaxman Island, you're probably looking at increasing snowfall intensity, and again, the risk that some of that could turn into 5 to 8 inches of storm accumulation by early Friday morning. The heaviest of that will be Thursday night. For southeast, showers across the southern part of the Panhandle. Northern areas may be in full sunshine. Same goes for Prince William Sound, south central Kodiak Island. Look at all that sun, all the way out to Lake Iliamna. A frontal boundary is still trying to work over the Alaska Range and the Denali Massif. And as that continues dropping southward, we will eventually see a better chance for showers and thunderstorms as we get into Friday in more southern locations. Some more rain could be working its way up through the Kenai Peninsula, Kodiak Island, and out across the Killbucks and into the Yukon Delta region. So there's the potential of that wetting rain for folks that are wondering about fire conditions there. Showers and thunderstorms may be widely scattered around that leftover front, but remember, there was some colder air up north. That frontal boundary has now made its way all the way down to the original frontal boundary, and so that colder air kind of got reinforced a little bit. But notice high pressure settled in too. That's going to switch the winds around to more of a west and southwesterly direction eventually, and behind that is warmer air once that happens. But it's not going to happen immediately for Friday morning. Things are going to be cold enough for snow there across the eastern Arctic coast. For southern parts of southeast, a few showers there in the higher train. Out west, unsettled conditions for the Bering, around the Pribilof, St. Matthew, and into the central chain. Low cloud stratus and some light rain, maybe just drizzle there as we head into the weekend. Here's a look at temperatures today. 50s and 60s for most of southeast. Haines made it up to 70 degrees. The capital city not too far behind. 60 in Sitka. Lower 60s for Ketchikan and Annette. A beautiful day for many in southeast Petersburg, Hyder, all in the 50s and 60s today. Prince William Sound saw highs in the lower 70s for Cordova, 72 degrees, 70 in Valdez, 63 around Portage, 70 for Seward, a little bit cooler around Homer, but a beautiful day in the Bay, 62 in Kenai, 61 in Anchorage, lower 60s for many around the Anchorage Bowl into Wasilla and Palmer, and then temperatures shot up to almost 70 degrees around Talkeetna and the Susitna Valley, 68 around Glen Ellen. It was lower 60s for Northway, upper 60s for Eagle, and 58 at 3 o'clock around Fairbanks. A beautiful day there around North Pole and out toward Fort Greely, even warmer at 63. 61 in Fort Yukon. And looking northward, you can see where that frontal boundary is. A front is nothing more than the leading edge or the beginning of that new air mass. And an air mass is a collection of air that's about the same temperature or close to it. So in this case, the air mass that's cold coming off the Arctic Ocean would be right about in here. That leading edge, we'd put the front right about in here. 40s down to 30s, low 30s around the Arctic coast. On the south side of that is where the warm air is. 50s, 60s, and 70s there. So kind of use your imagination. That's where I draw that blue line with the pointy barbs on it. 30s and 40s around Kotzebue Sound today. We understand the ice left quickly off the beach there in Shishmaref yesterday morning. 45 around Nome, 44 around Stebbins and areas around the Norton Sound. Temperatures were generally lower 40s there. Around the Yukon Delta, lower 50s as you get out towards some of the villages around Bethel. 40s and 50s there. 65 in Bethel itself. Lake Iliamna, very mild today, 73. 50s and 60s for most of the Alaska Peninsula, 61 in Kodiak, 54 in Sandpoint, 53 for Dutch Harbor in Unalaska, and 40s at 3 o'clock for St. Paul and St. George. Overnight lows are going to stay mild across the Yukon and Kuskokwim valleys, 40s and 50s there, south central in the lower to mid 40s. Southeast, upper 40s to about 50, upper 30s to mid 40s for the central and eastern Aleutians, 34 in Gamble. 27 for Barrow and 30 in Kaktovik tonight and 33 in Nome. High temperatures tomorrow back in the mid-50s there in Nome, 36 in Barrow, 38 for Kaktovik, middle to upper 60s, maybe even 70 for the Tanana Valley, including Fairbanks. South Central, lower 70s for many, including the Susitna Valley. Could be pretty toasty there tomorrow, 60 in Kodiak, 50s and 60s for Southeast, low to mid-50s for the Alaska Peninsula. Bethel looking at 66, Nunivak Island 54, and St. Paul 48 with a high of 50 in Dutch Harbor. IFR conditions are expected across the Chukchi coast there with those northerly winds still coming in. St. Paul's, St. Matthew, Nunivak Island, and the western chain all under IFR. Look for morning IFR across central and southern parts of Southeast, but by the afternoon, conditions should improve across some of the inner channels. You'll still be looking at some areas of coastal MVFR across the afternoon hours. Widely scattered showers and storms along the Alaska Range and northward. IFR conditions continue for the Chukchi coast, for the Pribilovs out toward Cape Newenham, St. Matthew, and the Pacific coast of the Alaska Peninsula. Here's your pass conditions. Anaktuvik and Adigan Pass, though, look like they're going to be okay through most of the daytime tomorrow. Lake Clark and Merrill Pass also expecting to see those at VFR. Rainy Pass, we expect convection and the possibility of showers and storms there, and for Windy Pass. Isabel Pass looks to be mainly VFR, but showers and storms will be watched for that region as well as Mentasta, and for Tanita Pass, again, VFR throughout most of the day, barring any convection. Portage Pass, we expect VFR conditions throughout your Thursday, and Chilkoot and White Pass also expected to be visual through most of the day. The freezing levels indicate that colder air is dropping southward, and again, we've got a reinforcing blast coming as we come into Thursday and Friday. The levels across the interior of Alaska anywhere from 2 to about 8,000 feet, and freezing levels out across the Bering running between 4 and 6. Across Southeast, you'll see levels between 4 and about 8, even a little bit higher in some cases northward from Yakutat to Prince William Sound. And you can see there is plenty of warm air out across the western Gulf, over 10,000 feet. Icing potential anywhere there's convection, especially towering thunderstorms, that is a risk, but we'll focus on the areas across the northern coastal plain. Above 7,000 feet, light to isolated moderate tomorrow. That will likely drop as we get into Thursday night and Friday. So Friday's map's going to look a little different tomorrow. For Nunivak Island, out across the Pribilovs and in the western chain, above 6,000 to 8,000 feet, and also across the southern parts of Southeast, some light to isolated moderate, above 6,000 feet for your daytime tomorrow. The jet stream in the upper levels of the atmosphere, about 30,000 feet or above, controls the weather down below. It is the superhighway of weather, and right now that superhighway is guiding systems around dominant low pressure across the northern Pacific and the Bering, one across the Arctic Ocean that's bringing the cold, and another system across the Pacific Northwest that's sloshing that moisture into southern parts of Southeast. Everyone else is under slow bake across the interior and south central and southwest thanks to high pressure ridging across the Gulf of Alaska that's encouraging winds to steer south of it from 115 to 130 knots. That's keeping the weather from moving into the interior and south central. At 9,000 feet, you can see a similar pattern there. Here's where the cold air is coming in from. Northwesterlies there hitting the Chukchi coast at 20 to 35. South and westerly flow coming up the west coast at 20 to as strong as 30 knots there. Northeasterlies coming down the back side of the Bering, 25 to 35 knots. And light winds coming into southeast anywhere from 15 to maybe as strong as 20 knots and again, somewhat variable underneath that flow. At 3,000 feet, things don't change a whole lot there. We've got southerlies moving over Bristol Bay at 20 to 30. Winds slow down coming across south central, but still in a southerly and warming direction at 30 knots. Northerlies through southeast at 15 to 25. And west and northwesterly winds picking up speed, especially closer to Point Barrow at 35 knots. So turbulence potential will focus up north below 4,000 feet. Widely scattered showers and thunderstorms, of course, imply isolated turbulence in the vicinity of those towers. And watch for some chop around St. Lawrence Island, St. Matthew, the Capes of Southwest, and Bristol Bay, as well as the Alaska Peninsula generally below 4,000 feet as well. That's a look at your aviation forecast. I'll be back with an ice update as well as your marine weather. Stay tuned.
NOAA's national marine sanctuaries protect areas of national significance for their exceptional natural beauty and resources. Research and monitoring expeditions provide scientists with valuable knowledge about the biodiversity and ecological integrity of these fragile underwater systems. The knowledge does not come easy. Their mission is challenging and sometimes dangerous, but these risks pale in comparison to the wealth of information that awaits them. This is Expedition Sanctuary Quest. Preparing a research vessel to go to sea is a huge undertaking. Over the course of one day, the empty ship transforms into a high-tech research platform. Tons of equipment, provisions, and supplies have to be loaded and stowed. The crew must double-check every last detail. Once at sea, the ship must be entirely self-sufficient. To keep everything running smoothly, the crew charts a cruise plan to coincide with the schedule of research. The goal of this expedition is to assess the health of offshore and nearshore marine ecosystems. The NOAA ship MacArthur will spend 2 months at sea, focusing on all the national marine sanctuaries along the West Coast, from Southern California to Northern Washington. Research takes place around the clock, and as night closes over the sanctuary, a team of special map makers deploy their side-scan sonar. The sonar will provide acoustic information to make detailed maps of the ocean floor. As one set of scientists are finishing up the night shift, another is being called to start their day. Wake-up calls come early, usually before the sun is up. By dawn, Chief Scientist Sarah Fangman is on the bridge, checking the plans for the deployment of the remotely operated vehicle.
Our weather has turned a little bit, and so we're going to have to move to a more protected area where we can work. Well, as long as we're heading in this direction, because the weather is forcing us that way, we'd like to stop.
Once calmer waters are found, the science continues. The remotely operated vehicle crew prepares their machine for its dive. The ROV allows the scientists to penetrate the unexplored depths, which account for 90% of the ocean. There is no idle time. While the ROV is being prepared, another group of scientists takes seawater and surface plankton samples. As the samples are collected, they go straight to the onboard lab, where they are processed and analyzed.
The ROV can stay down many hours, whereas divers are limited with supplied air, and we can rotate shifts and go 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
The cameras on the ROV are the scientists' eyes into the ocean. These cameras will confirm what the scientists have found through the side-scan sonar mapping. The ROV also allows scientists the opportunity to do species counts and more detailed habitat classification.
Guys, look at the anemones and the corals, cup corals.
Oh yeah.
That is
excellent.
gorgeous.
Excellent. Habitat's changed dramatically.
Yeah.
Oh,
did you
nice
see it just
one.
caught that?
Yeah.
Did you see that?
Oh, yeah.
A research ship can be a dangerous place with hazards all around. Everyone must be alert to these and know how to deal with emergencies. Fire and evacuation drills are performed without warning at any time of the day or night. As the science work goes on, the ship's crew also works around the clock. Engineers keep the engines operating properly, while the deck officers constantly monitor the ship's location. The deck crew operates all the machinery needed to perform the research, and the galley crew has to be sure all 40 people on board get fed. As night falls again, another shift of scientists begin their work in trawling for plankton.
Half moon out there, so there's quite a bit of light, which will affect how fast and how high these critters come up in the water column.
Okay, watch the slack there, folks.
Okay, got her. Let her go.
One more step in measuring productivity of an area.
Juvenile deposits, krill, squid, copepods.
After a long, wet night, dawn finally comes. The ship begins a transit to the next area for work. As miles of ocean slide beneath the hull, the observations and data collecting continue. Seabird and marine mammal observers are out working. Bird and whale counts help determine the health of a given area. For 2 months, this grueling schedule of day and night scientific work continues, searching for the understanding that will provide solutions to better manage resources within our national marine sanctuary.
For those of you tracking the Bering Sea, the Bering Sea is nearly sea ice free. Just a few hit and miss areas there that are still looking at ice, including around the Gulf of Anadyr, around the eastern tip of St. Lawrence Island, and that's really about it, and that is a couple weeks ahead of schedule, as you well know. Around the Chukchi coast, a lot of open water now there, and some changes occurring inside of Kotzebue Sound and along the Chukchi coast itself. There's still a wealth of ice, though, from about Point Barrow into the Beaufort Seacoast through about Prudhoe Bay and into Kaktovik. A lot of that has changed thanks to the shift in the wind, and watch for further changes as that colder air continues to work in from the north and from the west in the coming days. On to southeast, light winds from the south and southeast, 15 to about 10 knots or so a little bit further south. Seas running around 3 feet on the inside and 3 to 4 feet on the outside, with winds coming in from the west and northwest on Thursday, about 10 to 15 knots. For Friday, not really a big change there. Wind speeds diminish across the outer coast, running around 10 to 15 knots on the inside. You'll see more of a southerly flow up north and more of northwesterly flow through the Clarence Strait. Seas still holding around 2 to 3 feet. Looks like a pretty nice day for a couple days. South and southwesterlies continue inside of Cook Inlet and Shelikof Strait, 15 to 20 knots there, and across the west coast, 20 to 25 knots from Gore Point southward. You'll see seas around 3 to 5 feet there. 10-knot winds with a 2-foot sea inside of Prince William Sound on a southwesterly flow. That becomes southerly as we get into Friday. Winds stay fairly light across the west, 10 to 15 knots with 4 to 6-foot seas there east of Kodiak Island. Southwesterlies inside of Shelikof Strait. Southeasterlies up toward Calgan Island around 15 to 20 there. And southwesterlies in the northern Cook Inlet still holding around 10 knots with a 2-foot sea on Friday. Across the Alaska Peninsula and inside Bristol Bay, you'll see some southwesterlies blowing in, but Bristol Bay is looking at more of a southeasterly flow initially at 25 knots with a 5-foot sea. Southwesterlies 20 to 25 with 8-foot seas across the Pacific coast for Thursday. That becomes 20 knots with 6 to 8-foot seas on Friday. Southwesterlies diminish inside of Bristol Bay with a 3-foot sea, and look for 20 knots there with a southerly flow on the southern end of the Bering Sea coast with a 4-foot sea north of Cold Bay. Across the Aleutians, north and easterly winds from Kiska to Attu at 15 to 25, 7-foot seas in the west, 3 to 4-foot seas across the central and eastern Bering Sea coast, 7 to 8-foot seas across the Pacific coast in the same area, 20 to 25 knots. For Friday, look for more of a northwesterly push following that low pressure system. Southerlies out in front of that, 15 to 25, with 4 to 6-foot seas from Unalaska out toward Atka, and southerlies producing 20 to 25 knots with 9-foot seas from Nikolsky to Unalaska as we get through Friday. For the west coast, northeasterly winds coming out of Nome and Norton Sound, St. Lawrence Island, St. Matthew, and out around Hooper Bay, 25 to 30 knots with 5 to as high as 11-foot seas west of St. Matthew. Southwesterly winds for the Pribilofs with easterlies blowing offshore and out of the Kuskokwim Delta at 25 with 8-foot seas expected there on Thursday. Friday, that becomes more of a southerly push and that continues working northward. Here's that cold front right about here, so anything north of that's going to feel a whole lot different. 20 to 25 knots coming over St. Lawrence Island, 7 to 8-foot seas. Otherwise, 5-foot seas across the southern and central Bering and closer to Bristol Bay. For the north now, we're looking at westerly winds following that initial cold front that's already worked itself inland. West and northwesterly winds coming into Kotzebue Sound and Cape Lisburne, 15 to 20 knots with 3-foot seas, 5-foot seas further up the coast. And then here comes the next front, and you'll notice the wind shift again. More of a north and northwesterly flow as we get into Thursday night and Friday. Seas holding around 3 to 4 feet. Again, we're not predicting any sea change there around Barrow because of the ice that's still packed in. And look for northeasterlies coming down the Chukchi coast at about 10 to 15 with 2 to 3-foot seas. Once again, a winter storm watch is posted for the eastern Beaufort seacoast. That will go into effect tomorrow with snow on the way. We're watching to see if there's enough potential for 5 to 8 inches of snow for places like Kaktovik and Flaxman Island. Colder air has already dropped southward, and along that boundary, showers may form out in the west. Unsettled weather for the Bering and the Alaska Peninsula. And look for some showers and drizzle across southern parts of southeast. But the cold air that's working in tomorrow, and especially tomorrow night, could produce some heavier snowfall in short order. So Thursday evening seems to be the largest opportunity for that snow. A winter storm watch starts tomorrow for the eastern Beaufort seacoast. Thanks for watching.
These forecasts are to be used for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
The National Weather Service.
Sometimes the best way to find a living is to stay right where you are and study with UAS online. Career-specific distance programs from the University of Alaska Southeast are the fastest way to increase your earning power.
We connect all over the world.